All right, the Great Bitcoin Flipping in series number 6 coming right at you. My name's Gavin Mehl. Today I'm going to take you on the inside of a live space and we're going to go break down some of the big announcements, including the Chronicle upgrade on restoring the original Bitcoin protocol, the swap lobby, the swaps themselves happening, to create this flipping, which is going to be the BTC, liquidity dumping on over to the original protocol itself. Some of the legislation that's happening right now with the new financial, I'm calling it a new financial system. And a lot of the patriots out there have talked about this QFS being a financial system that was going to come forward under some white hat military thing. And well, that's not happening. Okay. What it's going to be in, and that's the law, is called the Clarity Act and the Genius Act. We're doing stablecoin legislation. That's how it's going to happen. You want to call it the QFS? Fine, but it's actually going to be known as the Clarity Act. And so we're part of bringing that forward now. And here's our big opportunity to be a part of this new financial system. And I want to break some of that down today. And then also, I want to explore the network access rules again, digital asset recovery and how we have a chance to, we've already established this system. It's there, we've got to now just kind of start to bring exposure and, eyes on it. We got Senator Wendy Rogers down there in Arizona starting to realize, hey, there's a new system that is already coming forward. It's a scalable Bitcoin. It's not this stagnant Bitcoin. We've got a scalable version of Bitcoin that's coming forward. And even someone like that is, so I'm going to bring you on the inside of the space. All right. So hit the ones, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll put some shows at the end. I'll do everything I can to make it high speed and massive. I'll see you at the top. Great Bitcoin Flipping Show. We've got this meme here with Kate Masso, Crypto Kate. She's on the freaking screen right there. Super cool. Today we're gonna talk all about like some of the ideas that I had about this was about like how I wanted the Chronicle upgrades coming. Massive. Just some of the memes that are cool, that are happening right now. But ultimately, the major thing that I want to drive traffic to and attention to is the lobbying effort inside the Clarity Act. Going into committees, we got to pass that sucker, as is. My opinion. Scott, pushing it forward. We passed that Clarity Act, man. I think it's going to be massive. Not change it. So yeah. Let's do it. I did put Casey in there. As soon as this music cuts, I'm gonna freaking start the show. And in the meantime, I'm gonna put out an article here in a minute. It's gonna be on Substack talking about the Genius Act, QFS. How the Treasury is going to be overseeing some of this stuff for the next few days. July 18th is the date for this. So, all right, here we go. Unmute. So what's up, everybody? Good morning. It's a great day. This is Gavin Mehl. We're going to do the Great Bitcoin Flipping Show today, number 6 here on the live space. Get it on the record. So today I wanted to talk and drive some attention to the number one thing is the Clarity Act going into committees, because it's already passed through the Senate, and the Clarity Act as is going to define a mature blockchain, which I think is going to be all in the best interest of anybody. Well, I don't know about everybody listening, but people who really believe in the original vision of Bitcoin that was in the white paper, and that Bitcoin is as a digital commodity. I really believe in the long run that Clarity Act as is going to help restore that vision. So, my hope is that we can drive some attention on it. I won't be there in DC to influence anything, but maybe Brian Doherty will be, or maybe somebody else will be out there and they can help influence, or maybe they'll see this on the record, and they'll be like, yeah, we really should pass this Clarity Act as it is. So, I do think that's a really important pressing issue right now, because it's going in, I think, on the 15th, and they're going to start discussing it. Also on the 18th of January is going to be the Genius Act is going to run its first report back from the Treasury on kind of like how some of the regulations like KYC and AMLs are going to be working. So that's a big deal. I mean, it's going to be the first report coming back 6 months after passing. And to those who are excited about the new financial system, it's here. It's now. It's ours for the taking. And it's also ours for the not taking, so we can also, lay down and do nothing about it. So it's ours for the taking if we jump on and start directing how we want to have this new stablecoin infrastructure built. Do we want to have it all on chain, like overlays and building on a BRC 100 wallet standard? Why not? Why can't it? Why can't we do that? I think it's only in our mind and our own limitations that would stop something like that. So also the swaps are big. We've got those swap lobby that came out. I did a show on that a couple weeks ago or recently. There's another swap that came out that Degan had put out. Apparently that you can swap from any crypto onto Bitcoin SV now with atomic swaps. So that's new. There's something also that Babbage had just put out yesterday, the day before, where they're onboarding in sats now with credit cards. I thought that was really freaking cool. We need to embrace those onboarding solutions. We desperately need one-click onboarding. Desperately. As soon as we have the one-click onboarding, apps like a Lament can absolutely take off and explode. Lament will explode and, basically be the dominating force to bring everyone, to turn this industry. Once we have the one-click onboarding, that every credit card should have, you just pay with your Apple Pay, Google Pay, boom, done. That's it. That's all that should happen. And we're not there yet. So we've got to keep driving attention to that. And hopefully the guys at Money can start focusing on that. The other thing is, I have a couple articles coming out. I'm going to do a new financial system article. The quantum resistant Bitcoin. I talked about that. The Chronicle upgrade. In case we and I talked about it yesterday about this the Chronicle upgrade. And when Bitcoin first had launched, it had that pure vision in the white paper that was in the original protocol, and all the opcodes, I guess, were put into place. And at some point, they started being restricted over time. And then in 2018, it began to be restored. And then in 2020, the actual first major back to Genesis upgrade happened. And then ever since there, maybe it was 2021. And then since then, it's been restored more and more. This is the final upgrade to restore the original protocol that was from the white paper and the way it was designed. And so it's Connor Murray has really been behind that. I think he's the freaking man. And those who don't know that guy, I would say, this is my opinion, but in my opinion, he's kind of like the Gavin Andreessen of the protocol. He's the steward, or his office is the steward in a way of the protocol. It doesn't mean he runs everything. It just, a steward is a steward. That's all, so I really, really respect him a lot, and his dedication and what he's done. And he's so important to restoring this protocol and the vision. Like he has a really unique set of knowledge and expertise, and we're really, really freaking grateful to have that guy, man. What a gem. So yeah, the Chronicle upgrade's huge, and that's going to be one of those things that'll be talked about in the history books over time, when it's done. And that Chronicle upgrade that goes along the lines with the network access rules and the digital asset recovery, because there will be, as that happens, and then we're going into this, like Wendy Rogers stuff. She's now recognizing this protocol, the original Bitcoin protocol. She's recognizing it now. It's one of those things that, like, it's all moving in that direction. So I try not to go too crazy off the rails with the conspiracy stuff. It's fun to meme about it and the Schizo Sunday talk stuff. That's always cool. But I really try to focus more on the law stuff that I can verify and read, and really that's actually happening. And one of the things I can read is the network access rules and the digital asset recovery procedures, because that is super valuable. We have those procedures to get coins back and do an arbitration procedure without having to go to court. And somebody's got to set precedent on that. There needs to be precedent set on that. It hasn't been done yet. So I'd like to, draw some attention, maybe bring some attention to that as well. So if somebody's lost a lot is a whale and they've lost a lot of coins, or their coins are all locked somewhere. That those network access rules, we could direct them forward and do digital asset recovery on that. It could happen. I did have one time recently where a hacker had got into a friend's crypto Bitcoin, and he stole it. Let's just. It wasn't that he got the private keys. It was a flaw. It was kind of a bug that he attacked and exploited. But I found a way to once that happened, my buddy had come to me and I was like, oh, let me check this out. So we looked at it. He did all the hard work in finding out where the money had went, where the crypto had gone to. And then it was like, let's go after this guy. And so we helped put together some procedures to where like he opened up a full-on federal investigation, onto the process, onto the guy. And dude, by that point, that guy just came forward and said, oh, it was a mistake. It was an error. I didn't mean to do that. And gave all the crypto back, like almost $1 million. So much pressure that was put on them, and they ended up, just giving it back, and that was it. There was no court procedure. It was all behind the scenes, done. No actions. So those things it is possible to do if you have the way to track where the funds went, and that is a procedure that could really come about. So, okay, Casey, we got you up here now. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Yeah, I love it. Good job. So what some of the things that we talked about yesterday, did you have anything on your mind that you wanted to draw attention to?
Well, I mean, this definitely Chronicle thing feels like it's a final step in restoring Bitcoin and finishing it and giving it, the ability to get defined in its place in the law. So that's exciting. The other thing I wanted to chat about, I'm putting in the nest right now if you wanted to talk about what Craig said here on the 10th. If you look at it, BSB isn't listed on AWS, and part of the problem lies with the fundamental issues on how the internet itself operates, and kind of dive into that. Was hoping to get some technical minds up on stage today to kind of, oh, I see David Case. Please come up and chat about that if we can, because I think that's a big hurdle to one of the final puzzle pieces really going into place and getting scaling taken off very quickly, like Craig mentions in this blurb here. So
Okay, so
that's the only thing I really wanted to
what
make
is
sure
that
we
blurb
can
about? I
chat
know you're
about.
putting it in the nest, but for some reason mine is delayed, so I don't see it yet. Um, how
Well,
do
Light BSV had said on the 9th that their teams at BSVA have met with AWS and their Web3 teams, and they're slowly moving towards ecosystem development, but we need all of our scaling base layers, Terranode, SPV, overlay protocols, etc., in order to provide a viable roadmap that AWS customers can build on. It's coming, which I thought was really an exciting post. And then Craig replied to him and said, BSV isn't listed on AWS, and part of the problem lies with fundamental issues in how the internet itself operates. One of the biggest hurdles is multicast. Multicast routing hasn't been implemented properly, and the protocols that exist are a patchwork mess. Until this is solved, scalability is hamstrung. It's not just about moving data quickly, it's about doing so efficiently on a global scale. This is why solving the multicast issue is critical for BSV. Once we crack that, things will scale faster than anyone can imagine. 1 million transactions per second, that's barely scratching the surface of what's possible. What we're talking about is orders of magnitude greater. Fixing multicast isn't just about BSV. We'll see what real scalability looks like.
Here it is.
So if we can, make sure we touch on that, I think it's really important technologically to address what, roadmap looks like for fixing that issue that Craig brings up there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's something I'll have to table on. I don't understand it, so I'll have to come back to that.
Sure.
Um, but it's a
I
good, it sounds
invited
like it's
David up.
important. Pardon?
If you can, I just invited David Case up. If you uh have the opportunity to come up and elaborate on that a little bit, would be awesome. I know you're on the
You
front
know
lines
what?
of
Speaking
that
of David
development,
Case, one
so
one stat is one of those things I've talked about recently. Maybe actually I had a call. I had a show yesterday I did with some guys. They invited me on a show with in Spain, and we were talking about like the protocol going forward. And there's been a debate that I actually would be love to hear David's opinion about that I saw online about OneSat versus STAS. I think it's even in this maybe in this article by Connor. I'm not sure. And I'm
hey, welcome to the stage, David. Thank you so much for coming up.
Thank you.
Hey, David.
Unfortunately, on the IPv6 stuff, I'm pretty ignorant, so I don't know I'm going to help a whole lot there. But I might be able to address some of your other questions there, Gavin, or anything else
Yeah,
you guys have.
yeah. I had this one. Is it in Connor's article or another? There was a thread that was going through. There's a guy actually. Okay, the where this came from is I uh follow somebody. What's his name? The DXS guys, and I follow them, and they talk about STAS. And I actually had a show with them sometime last year, and they said, "Oh, STAS is this protocol that you use SATs and apparently and it really made a lot of sense for me." Well, in a way, I am not doing it justice. I need a little more help on explaining it, but I really liked the way he described it. And then Kurt explained OneSat to me on a different time. And I said, well, that makes a lot of sense too on how the OneSat operates. And so, but then the guy with DXS, he debates and said, well, no, OneSat is not as good as STAS. STAS is better. And then Kurt said, no, I think it's an interesting debate, and I would love to hear your perspective on maybe you can share both opinions.
Uh, yeah, I mean, so basically, STAS is particular locking script that you are locking up Bitcoin with, and it uses satoshis to represent whatever the quantity that is held in that output. So if you've got a token that represents, I don't know, $100, well, that's going to be represented as 100 satoshis, or I mean, obviously cents. You can adjust the where the decimal goes as much as you want, but so there's a one-to-one relationship between a Satoshi, which has its value in BSV, versus the thing it also represents. So in that world, like the Satoshi is worth both the Satoshi and the token that it's representing. And essentially everything there has to do with the particular locking script. So you can't encumber those coins in anything else. You can't put them in another contract that locks them for sale for some other criteria. It is at its core, it is everything is encumbered by the script that is tied around STAS. Now, that is in some ways that's a good thing. That essentially means if what you're trying to do with it is just simply transfer value from one person to another, um, and the contract that it's held in does all the logic you need it to do, well, that's just fine. But you can't really compose larger solutions on chain dealing with STAS tokens, because the STAS tokens themselves can only do the things that were built into them from the very beginning. Where ones had ordinals and like BSV 21 tokens we've got there, um, it's a lot less kind of encumbered in how you use it. It's far more just primitive. It's a primitive way that says um, there are rules by which you interpret what happens on chain to make sense of how the tokens have transferred and who owns them and all that. But the although that like the data that represents your token is stored in a locking script, you can put any other logic you want in that locking script. So you can lock those up in a contract that says, okay, I'm going to sell these to the first person who sends me this much this many Satoshis, or I'm going to put this in some sort of a time lock contract where a certain amount unlocks after a certain amount of time, and whatever other kind of logic you want to build into Bitcoin script. STAS uses Bitcoin script, but you can't script it because it's kind of like all the logic you ever want to do with it is already built into those scripts. And it just ensures that the same script gets used over and over and over again. Where OneSat ordinals is more like it's just a building block that you could put together with a whole bunch of other building blocks to achieve kind of more complex type solutions.
All right, so
Is that too technical, or does that make sense?
I'm gonna find this thread and see if I can ask you some questions about it. And it was Casey, this was it was Arm and Kurt. They were having a debate about this on an X post. And it was really, really interesting recently. Thank you for, oh yeah, here it is. Okay, I'm gonna share this right here in the chat, Casey. I think I can do that. Here it is. Share post via. How do I share that into the space, Casey?
You should just be able to go to a post and then down in the little arrow pointing up in the bottom right corner, you scroll over until it says a little mic with the Great Bitcoin Flippening icon. And when you click on that, it shares it in the nest.
Okay, so I'm in the thing. All right, so
Go to the post you want to share.
yep.
Bottom right corner arrow pointing up. Click
Okay.
it. And then on your copy link, share via, messages, whatever your options are.
Share post via.
Scroll over until you see a little mic icon for the space. And when you click on that, it'll go in the nest.
Okay. All right, I'm just gonna repost this
Or
right
send
now.
it, text it to me or whatever.
I just retweeted it right now, so it's at the front of my
Okay.
thing. I couldn't do
I'll
it.
grab it and put it up there.
Yeah, so here's what it says. It says, thank you, Kurt, for taking the time to elaborate on your concerns about STAS token. This is exactly the proper discussion that we need to have, et cetera. Now, he goes like this. He says, without this, we would lose what makes Bitcoin revolutionary. Now, here's a point-by-point analysis. STAS demand. OneSat's demand for STAS is minimal, using a single SAT as a data carrier, and the token's value is on JSON payload. This is similar to run or tokenized. STAS creates real economic demand by using every SAT as a unit of account, eliminating off-chain account entirely. 2. Okay, so that's the first point. Dave, do you have any response?
Yeah. So yes, and like, how do I want to get at this without getting too technical? So there is this. I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, but there is this kind of issue with representing things on Bitcoin, where the state kind of crosses multiple transactions, and you end up with this kind of well-known problem called the back to Genesis problem. And what that really means is if so if you've got a contract on chain that says, okay, if the inputs of this transaction that you're going to do, maybe it says, okay, you need to have $100 worth of a token included in that contract. Well, in both cases of OneSat ordinals and with STAS, you have this back to Genesis problem, which says the inputs that you're spending might look like they are valid STAS tokens or OneSat ordinal tokens or whatever, but someone could have created an output that came from that was just like, it's a counterfeit, essentially. It's not really a token, it just looks like a token. And in either one of the two technologies, you actually have to kind of crawl back the chain and validate every transaction between kind of the inputs that you're spending in this transaction and where they came into existence. And so essentially that means tracking back to where the token was issued. And that token issuance on chain is kind of in the BSV 21 world, we call that the token ID. So it's simply the output on the chain where this token was first defined. STAS, they have, I don't know if they use the same terminology or whatever, but it's the same thing. It's where was this token actually defined? Where were its rules defined on chain? And then it's been sent around and split and joined and spent a whole bunch of times, and now someone's trying to give you these tokens as payment. You need to know, are these actually valid tokens that track back through that chain, or are they an output that someone just created that looks like it is but doesn't actually track back through that history? And so either way, if you're going to receive a payment from someone in a token on either of those technologies, you have to be able to validate that whole chain back. And so I guess I would kind of dispute that claim that's being made that with STAS you don't have to do that, because you do have to do that. There's nothing in there that's going to tell you that this was an actual valid token that has followed all the rules unless you go back through and validate that it has gone through and followed all the rules. So I'm not totally sure I even understand.
Let me go to the second point and the third, because this is where it's going to get really, really heavy. And this is coming from Aram, so not from me. I don't have the knowledge about this. So, but Aram apparently does. He's saying complexity and cost. He's saying this to Kurt. You mentioned CPU tax for STAS, but STAS validation is trillions of times less complex than solving a hash. The real cost is with OneSat, which requires off-chain logic to maintain balances and validate transactions. STAS, with just 1-2 kilobyte of easily auditable on-chain code, both substantiates the necessity to create an entirely new off-chain settlement platform, and most importantly, retains all activity on-chain, increasing utility, scarcity, and mining revenue. We offer big blockers. We are big blockers after all. 3, architecture. OneSat, like any layer 2, reintroduces an unscalable accounting-based architecture for settlement using the UTXO ledger merely as a store of data. This is a step backwards. So go ahead.
I think he's going off some bad assumptions of how. So BSV 21, which is like the only fungible token standard we're actually still doing in the OneSat space, was like, it started as BRC, or I'm sorry, as BSV 20, which came off of whatever the BRs, whatever the BTC one is. And in that level, BTC's implementation was absolutely an account-based system. Then we went to BSV 20, which is what we came up with, which it was an absolutely a UTXO based system, but it had some other really kind of fundamental flaws in it. Used the concept that says the first person throughout the entire chain to deploy this token on the chain, a token identified by a 4-character symbol. The rules in that were the first person to deploy that on chain, that is the valid deployment of the token. Well, that raises all sorts of other issues of, you have to be able to prove that that's the first time that happened on the chain. And you can prove that it wasn't by showing a proof of someone else deploying a token with that same ticker before that. So you can disprove that it was the first thing on the chain, but the only way to prove that it was the first thing on the chain is to review every single transaction that happened before it on the chain and prove that that same ticker wasn't deployed beforehand. So that was BSV 20. We've pretty much left that behind, although there are still some infrastructure that supports it. BSV 21 kind of takes that an entirely different level. You're not claiming a unique identifier of a ticker for these tokens. You're literally creating a transaction where it happens on, or where you're deploying the token on chain, and the identifier of that token is simply where on chain did you deploy it. And so there can't be any like duplicates or anything like that, because you can't. Two people can't create the same transaction. That's just not how any of it works.
Why does he claim that OneSat is off chain and it's not on chain?
I don't know. Like it's off chain in the same way that STAS is off chain, is that you have to follow the trail back, like I said earlier, back to where it was deployed in order to know if it's valid. And so there does have to be some level of either off chain already having calculated which outputs are valid. And so when someone spends one of those, you don't have to trace it all the way back to Genesis, because it's already been traced back to Genesis and you already have confidence that it's been traced back to Genesis. So there, you're basically just not redoing that step at a later point. But both of them are the same in that regard. Like, fundamentally, I don't actually see them as being that much different, except for that initial fact that I said of like the the script, kind of the hard coded script, is how they enforce that the rules don't change. Where that is one thing that's different. It's like in OneSat and in BSV 21s, like literally any script you can put these things. All that really matters is that the JSON blob is there and then it follows the rules.
So, David, are
And
you like, I guess in a philosophical sense, are you like a purist, to where you believe that things should scale on chain, or do
yeah,
you?
absolutely.
Oh, you are, okay. All
But
right.
I mean, I do think that there's lots and lots of, like, even when things scale on chain, when we're in this kind of new Terranode world of enormous blocks that where we're going to get to, you still get to a point that says just because something is on chain, if you need to look up what's in a transaction, it's not like you can just go get it somewhere. Someone has to have it saved. So kind of even the definition of what on chain is, I think there's probably some room for
Hmm.
misunderstanding. But like,
Okay. Maybe that's a place
but
to start.
hashed on chain, or at least like it's, yes, things I do think should be locked on chain, as much as possible where it makes sense. But there's also many use cases where if you're dealing with private stuff between two people that has nothing to do with the rest of the world at large and has nothing to do with proving the details of what are happened, no, that doesn't need to be on chain at all. That's, in fact, you're kind of opening yourself up to put some of that stuff on chain.
Hmm.
Um,
So, is it possible that ARM had looked at the OneSat protocol from maybe like its first iteration, from back when it was evolving from BTC?
I think maybe so, but I mean, I guess the one thing that where maybe what he's saying makes sense, and I would agree with him, is that, so in the STAS world, if someone is sending you a token, yes, you need to go through this whole validation step to make sure that that token is not a counterfeit. But the script on chain itself enforces that you can't screw up and destroy it. So essentially, the script that locks up STAS tokens does mean if you're going to spend this STAS token, there are only two different ways that you can spend it. One is to spend it in a valid fashion, and the other way is to explicitly destroy it. Those are kind of like built into the STAS contract, that it can't be spent any other way. Where in the OneSat world, we've got a lot more of kind of like, I don't want to encumber it that way because I want to be able to build other contracts, other logic. I want to be able to I want to be able to build vending machines on this thing that people can automatically swap one token for another. I want to be able to, so like, that's really where the trade-off comes, is if the token is going to be have any on-chain logic in addition to just simply being a token, then you need the ability to be able to program other things into that token, into what, like, essentially the output that holds the token. And that's kind of a big difference there. Of in the SaaS world, you cannot change the script in any other way. You cannot put any other logic in that token than what was in that token
Hmm.
when it was released. So you can't encumber it. You can't lock it up. You can't do anything with it. You can transfer it. Um, but that does mean you can't make a mistake and accidentally destroy it. Where in the BSV 21 world, You can do anything. You can lock it up in any contract you want, but that does mean that that gives you the freedom to make mistakes or have buggy software or whatever that just takes your token and totally destroys it. So it's really the kind of how much are we micromanaging the control of what you can do with it versus how much is it just kind of a what's the word I want to say? Just a tool that you can compose together with a bunch of other tools to make a more complete solution.
Hmm. And what are your thoughts? Okay, I want to talk about the Chronicle, but before I do that, what are your thoughts on the BRC 100 protocol, the wallet standard?
I it's so I'm actually that the project I'm working on right now is building BRC 100 support into Yours Wallet. Yours Wallet is a
Oh,
browser extension
yeah.
wallet. Um, so I guess I really am liking it for the most part. There's definitely a number of things that if you've been in this space for 15 years and have been doing things in a very, I guess, BTC and before kind of way, that gets a little more complicated, or that I should say, the BRC 100 wallet protocol kind of it's opinionated. It's opinionated that you do things the right way or a certain way. I don't want to say right because there's lots of right ways, but um, and that's great is until you're trying to kind of crowbar in some old solution you've got to work within the BRC 100 fashion, and then that definitely does raise some like, how am I going to do this? Because I have to fit within these opinionated structures. But having said that, like the wallet tools that BSVA has released and Ty's team has contributed to a lot to in the last couple of years are pretty nice. And it's so I mean basically what we're doing in this Yours Wallet project. Oh, hi Ty. What we're doing in this Yours Wallet project is essentially taking the exact same BSVA wallet toolbox project that the MetaNet wallet and other things all are built on, and in that one piece, there's like it's built to run on your computer as an application. It expects your databases to be um, like an actual I don't know, running SQLite or running MySQL or Postgres or whatever, where there's a browser database that's built into every browser that's a different way of doing that. And they've done a lot of work in kind of building out the frameworks of how do we run this in a browser window. As I've been plugging in, I've been realizing there's a couple areas that like, okay, we need to fix this. This doesn't quite work or whatever, just because that browser area is kind of a new area of what's been tested. But essentially, the underlying guts of the actual wallet for what we're doing in Yours Wallet is the same code. It's the same project. It's the same everything. The differences come in how do you back up your keys and what's your user interface look like and how do people interact with kind of with the wallet, but the underlying wallet software is the same exact software.
Yeah, and Yours Wallet is pretty popular. So I'm wondering, well, at least as far as I remember, I thought it was, but I haven't used it.
It has been it's kind of fallen into disrepair a little bit. So
Oh,
this project is definitely going to be necessary to kind of get it back to life, but also to get it into the place that any app that can speak with MetaNet Wallet can speak with Yours Wallet is where I mean, the exact same, like I say, the exact same interface that programmers call to say, hey, my app wants to have this user send $10 to buy this thing. That programming interface is exactly the same. So whether you go to an e-commerce website via the MetaNet wallet or whether you go to it in your web browser and you've got Yours Wallet extension installed, that website does the exact same thing to communicate with either wallet or any future wallets that come out.
yeah. So you're the one who's handling basically the making Yours Wallet compliant with BRC 100. It sounds like. And
Yeah, you can say that. I mean,
okay.
I'm not the one in charge of making the Yours Wallet user interface look nice because I suck at that. Um, but I am the one, yeah, making it defining kind of the interface and building BRC 100 into it. Yes.
Okay. And so, like, I know I see a post here that says November 6th, we're going to be compliant with BRC 100. I mean, does this take like a year or two? Like, how long does this take to do? I mean, is this,
Well, where we're at right now is over the holidays, I've kind of been on my own doing all the ugly back end stuff. And then just in the last week, I've started to get some of my front end guys back involved. But no, we're like, we were shooting for the end of the year. We missed it.
okay.
But like within the next several weeks, a few weeks, not several, where there should start being some visible. So in fact, we might even have a beta. I don't know, in the next week or so. I have no idea. I'm not at this point. I've taken it as far as I can take it without the other guys pulling in, and we have a meeting tomorrow to start pulling them in really. And so
Is that WAGs?
Wags and Satchmo, Luke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. So it sounds like things are moving forward. You just got to get some collaboration from those other guys. And, that's really cool though. It's a popular wallet that, or at least it's a somewhat well-known wallet. I mean, it's been used a little bit, I think, or new. Is that
Yeah.
is that a way that other wallets like Handcash, for example, could potentially work with BRC 100 the way you're doing it?
Handcash is kind of a different beast because now that's not to say they couldn't, but BRC 100 wallet is very much from the standpoint that says these are a user's keys, and the user has control of the keys, and the user has control of all the derivations of the keys. So essentially, nothing about the control is outside of the user's hands. Handcash is more about this threshold signature, or at least has been in the past, about this threshold concept, which says it isn't just the user, it's the user and Handcash, and there are some third party signing providers. So when you go to actually send a transaction via Handcash, your keys that are stored on your device are not directly signing the transaction that you're broadcasting. Your wallet and Handcash's servers and their third-party signing provider servers are all collaborating at the time of making a transaction to build a signature and apply it. So maybe, but it's not as simple. It's not just
Okay.
let me take this other software and plug it in.
Let me ask you this then, because this is probably a better example. So there's another new wallet. It's called User Wallet by Babbage, and it was on MetaNet. Now it's very different from what I'm used to in the way of a wallet. I did download it, and I'm wondering. I bought some Sats on there. They have you buy Sats with a credit card. I was able to buy $10 of the Sats on a credit card like that. It's really fast. So can you tell me the difference between this wallet and like I guess your more traditional wallets like a Handcash or yours?
Yeah, I think the problem really comes in defining what even a wallet is.
Okay, yeah.
So there's kind of three different pieces to it, I think, and I just came up with three on my head, on the top of my head, so maybe there's more or less. But the first part is simply storing your keys and protecting your keys, and that has nothing to do with how many outputs do you own or how much. Like you can own nothing, or you can own $1 billion, and there still comes down to the basic concept of something needs to be holding my keys, and when I need a signature, something needs to be creating that signature for me and applying it to a transaction. So at a very generic level, just that key management and using your keys is one piece of what a wallet is. Then there's another aspect, which is keeping track of what do I own. So if I need to send you $10, I need to know that I have $10. I need to know what outputs is that $10 held in. I need to figure out, there's just simply what do I even own right now. So that's another aspect. And then you kind of get into this, like at those two levels, pretty much every wallet does those two things in some form or fashion. But everything else of how does a user interact with these? How does software interact with this? How are actual transactions being built? And how are actual transactions, like how does a user's wallet know which inputs need to get signed versus which ones belong to other people that are already signed? Like the whole kind of application layer like lots and lots of different tools that are trying to do lots and lots of different things can all be kind of, and would kind of traditionally have been called a wallet. But those, I mean, that can be anything from I've just got my money and I can send money to other people. And so that kind of like basic wallet functionality, that's actually built already into all the BRC 100 tooling, by the way, too. But it's like the distinction between different wallets outside of those levels becomes simply what is the user actually interacting with? How do I show them their balance? What kind of assets do I show balance of? Like a STAS wallet, like you were asking about earlier, needs to know specifically about STAS outputs and how to present those and how to show people their balances for different tokens. Where a BSV21 wallet, these are the same type of things, but they're completely different outputs and completely different rules. And so it's, but everything in both those worlds is in the fungible token world that says, okay, I have got this asset and I've got this many of that asset. Well, then you get to the non-fungible token worlds. And that's all about, okay, maybe I've got images or audio files or video files or other things that are tokenized that are represented on the blockchain. While a wallet that knows how to spend STAS tokens has no idea what a OneSat ordinal inscription looks like or how to interpret that or how to make sense of that in any way. So it's like the wallet software itself, almost how we've thought about what a wallet is, in this case, that almost becomes just application logic. That almost becomes, if you're shopping at Amazon versus you're shopping at Walmart.com, like they have different ways to show you what's available. They have different ways that you can get things delivered or pick up, or it's like that's all kind of outside the basis of managing the keys and keeping track of your UTXOs. And so I don't know, like just the term wallet itself is kind of imprecise.
Hmm. So sounds like we've a lot of work to do. I mean, if we want to get adoption, I mean, and I want to just be a boomer and use this thing, and I want to just go in there and click. I want one click to buy a picture of a girl who I think is cute, and I just want to buy it for 25 cents. And I don't know anything about wallets. How do we get there? Because that seems to be the big breakthrough. Like once we can somehow get there where, I just want to buy her picture for 25 cents. I want to click it. Boom, done. Have a nice day. And then it goes to me. I get it, but I can't seem to get to that point. There's like,
Well, and yeah, and see some of that even depends. So there's just many layers to that question of like, okay, so if it were a OneSat ordinal inscription and that's what you're buying, we have contracts out there. We have tools that will build these contracts that says I can lock up a OneSat ordinals output that says anyone who wants to buy this, all they have to do is essentially build a transaction that transfers that asset to themselves and transfers the 25 cents to me, and then I don't care who buys it. But there's got to be some places of marketplaces or overlays or something where people can find, hey, this picture's for sale. And the software, the site where you're going to find that needs to know, okay, how do I build this transaction that will do the rules that are built into that ordinal lock is the name of the contract. So something is listed as an ordinal lock. I need to build a transaction that transfers the 25 cents to the person who's listing it and transfers the image to the person who's buying it. Well, you can't transfer it unless you build the appropriate transaction, but the software needs to know how to build the transaction. And that might be that is logic that's built into a wallet for buying those kind of things, but more than likely it's going to be that logic kind of goes in the websites that are selling it or the web front ends that are selling it. And it might be that, I've got work on an overlay where kind of just simply the open inventory of everything that's for sale gets synced with a bunch of with everyone who's running an overlay server for that topic. Now, this is not fully ready yet, but So in that case, it might just be, okay, I want to run a marketplace. I run the ordinal marketplace overlay topic on my overlay server. It communicates with peers, pulls in all the current inventory, everything, and then I can have a web page where people can browse the inventory through my site. And if my search tools and my fees and whatever I do is what makes people makes it easiest for people to buy it, well, then they'll go to my site and do it. But someone else can do the same thing with the same contracts, the same rules, the same everything, and they have a completely different user experience. And so that's a different. So in some ways, like there's lots and lots of the fundamental tools to kind of get collaboration on these things. But
what about
yeah,
just
go ahead.
paying with, so I have fiat, for example, and I want to buy this picture and, I want to get it. And they're selling it apparently in let's say money stable coin, for example. And I want to buy it, can I get that? Is there a seamless way to do that I mean, I saw the Babbage, they have this new thing where you can buy sats now with a credit card on this user wallet, which is freaking amazing, so um
Well, but in that case, I mean, yes, but in the Babbage case you were just talking about there, someone is actually holding those satoshis, and someone has software running that ties into Stripe or whatever payment system it's doing, and essentially all of that part happens off chain. There's you see the website that says I want to buy it. You put in your credit card. You do like none of that is on chain stuff at all. In that kind of solution, the only part that is actually on chain is when that Stripe purchase or whatever goes through, someone or some computer system that is holding the actual BSV will, upon receiving all the kind of feedback that this purchase is made, it's going to then send a Bitcoin transaction to that person to give them their Bitcoin. So the only part that's actually part of the chain at all in that process is just the very last part of the seller sends the purchased Bitcoin to the buyer.
oh,
So, and there's tons, and like we've got so many different pieces to like even your money stablecoin solution there. So that adds some more complexity because um, you need a transaction that transfers money, and money has to sign off on that transaction as well. But also you want to all that kind of processes of tying these different little components and pieces together of a Stripe payment or tying all those things together. That's still very much application level stuff. That requires someone providing a solution to users and wiring all those different pieces together. And I will
oh.
say that's one thing we're just over the last 6 months, I've gotten really, really stoked about how many of those component pieces are now at a point where they're ready to just be plugged together. And BRC 100 falls into that, and overlay services falls into that, and some various things that we've been working on internally for years is now kind of at that point too. So it's like we're now at the point that people who have the ideas that says I would like to offer X, Y, or Z, and let me just pull a little bit of this ingredient over here, and a little bit of this ingredient over there, and let me do some meal prep to kind of wrap these things together, and then boom, I've got a website that people can go to that can interact with their BRC 100 wallet, that can build the transactions, that does the payments, that can and that then the overlay services can validate everything, and then their server can just deliver. So you end up with all these individual pieces. And so when I say the word composability, that's really what that is I can take a little bit here, I can take this piece over here, I can take this piece over here, and between them, I've got a solution that I didn't have to build any of the underlying kind of infrastructure to pull this off. I just needed to grab a
Yeah.
little dash of this and a dab of that.
Now, David, there's some huge things like on the horizon here for opportunity for everyone here to be a part of this new what I would say this new financial system that has emerged. So when they passed the Genius Act in Congress in July, it said 180 days the first report would come out from the Treasury on some of the operations of the Genius Act and how it would be implemented. This is the stablecoin legislation, and so it's coming out here. I think in the next week or so, we're going to have our first report back from the Treasury. In addition, this week is going to be the what's called the Clarity Act goes into committee in the Senate. And that's going to help to define a mature blockchain, and it's going to kind of go back and forth. But we know that for sure the Genius Act is here. So this new system, I mean, they're not using the word new financial system in the law, but it's kind of what it is. They're directing this new framework for how to regulate this new stablecoin operations that are going to be, under the Treasury. How is it going to work? And I feel like we've got about a 2-year window or so, right? So where we can easily miss it or we can jump all over it, and so if we know it, we I'm just wondering what your perspective on this. How if you had a magic wand or you had decision making power, how would you bring forward these stable coins to make them the most possible, best way to work?
Yeah, that is above my pay grade.
Okay.
I mean, technologically speaking, I think the way that money is set up right now um, easily fits in what I know about the Genius Act. But and I think probably for regulated stablecoins, that's always going to. So how money works is essentially it's kind of similar to how I described hand cash working in some ways. It's different technologically, but it still ends up with when I go to send a transaction to someone else, I can't just send it to them. What I'm actually doing is I'm building the transaction, I'm signing my part of the transaction, and I send it to money for them to verify everything looks good and for them to also apply a signature to that transaction. And the outputs in money are not locked up in normal pay to public key hash scripts. They're locked up in what's called a cosigner script. And essentially it's a pay to public key hash script that also has a cosigner that has to sign off on it, and money controls those cosigner keys. I think that that technology works great with the whole idea that says, okay, this is great, you've got these assets, but you need to be able to freeze them, or you need to be able to whatever, like all the regulatory stuff. Well, in that money world, they just simply, if something doesn't comply or if something has been frozen, they just simply don't sign off on a transfer for it. And so freezing assets just becomes literally as simple as don't sign off on a transfer of these assets and it won't get transferred because they have to sign it in order for it to transfer. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't know what is the right way to do this stuff um on the regulatory standpoint. I'm going to try and follow the law where I can, but uh
Oh,
I
it's
don't
funny.
know.
I don't really think too many people know the answer to that, to be honest, David. And I think it's being kind of paved forward. Like that's what these committees are for. They're looking for guidance from experts and they're wanting it to be compliant with the law, but they don't know exactly how to do it. And so, um,
Well,
yeah,
and that's just it though, is that becomes an expertise not in the tech but in the law. And
yeah.
it's
So
more for you to give them the advice than me.
looks like we got Babbage up as well. So, did you want to chime in, Ty? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, guys, just jumping in. Good conversation. Saw this was going on. Saw David up here. I was like, oh, nice. Let's just pop in and see what's cooking. Glad that you guys are making progress on the BRC 100 stuff. I know you've been working with Tone and some other people, and seeing that go forward is
Can you come a little
really
closer
good.
to the mics? Can you come a little closer to the mic, Ty?
What is it?
Oh, I was just saying if you could come a little bit closer to the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
There we go.
So, yeah, just was saying happy to be here and glad to see this stuff moving forward. On the regulatory side, it's interesting. I mean, it's like the intersection of the law with the technology, and we have to, get some people to think in both of those worlds at once, I guess. Like, what does compliance look like in the form of identity certificates that have to be exchanged in order to facilitate a KYC process, or I don't know. There's some stuff that we have to plug together, and proofs of concept that can be demonstrated. Really, I guess, as a non-legal person, what I try to do is zoom all the way out and think, why are these people here, and what are their intentions? What are their, assumedly good intentions if they were here for the right reasons in putting forward these laws and regulations? Of course, we can then reason that, maybe they want to make sure that if criminals, get hold of money, that we should be able to stop them from continuing to use it for illegal purposes. And we should have systems to verify that if someone comes into your shop and gives you $1 million or $1,000 of stolen money, that we should not be able to accept it. We should have some way of saying, okay, where did you get this money, versus just, oh, I got it anonymously. So maybe bridging the gap there involves going from that intentionality, like what would a well-intentioned regulator do? Of course, they have to balance freedom and people's desire to not be involved with large criminal networks, and a lot of other things. But I don't know. I feel like the tools that we have are building blocks, and whatever they demand that gets built, right? Obviously, there's a fine line there, and we just want to make sure we have the best technology building blocks, whether it's the ability to send transactions without the need to trust someone at the center of every exchange, or the ability to verify information associated with who we're dealing with, right? There, make sure that if you're, make sure that if you're selling alcohol, that it's not being sold to someone who's underage, is one example. I don't know. There's different ways to go about these processes.
Yeah, well, for the first time here, Ty, this is the law. It looks like is going to define very important words going forward. For example, blockchain is going to be defined in the Clarity Act. The term blockchain means any technology where data is, one, shared across a network to create a distributed ledger of independently verifiable transactions or information among network participants. That's the first part. Any comments on that?
I don't know. People are going to define things. Sometimes it's important that the people figure out how to define it properly. We don't want an incorrect definition becoming law. So people should work to make sure that doesn't happen. Conversely, technology develops on a trajectory, and people start to use things that work and trust processes that work for them as individuals and as wider scoped communities, right? So like maybe certain processes work for smaller entities, and then those entities get bigger. Now you're thinking about not just a local farmer's market, but you're thinking about a credit union. And we put in place reasonable processes as the systems grow, and and that's the other lever of this machine, right? Like there's the people at the top who try to define things and constrain outcomes, and then there's the people at the bottom that try to establish processes that work for them, subject to those rules. And that bidirectional, exchange of information between those two groups and everything, right? Whether it's the regulators at the very top, or the people who lobby things, or the hopefully not just people who lobby things, but also people who actually are directly impacted, etc. I don't know. They all have their place. My focus is on making sure that from the, because this is really where I have any real influences, is that at the base layer, between the entities involved at the bottom, the shopkeeper and the person who buys something, or the person who operates a farmer's market and doesn't want to see anybody get double spent in their whole market, regardless of who they are, what they're buying. Or maybe somebody who is requiring that, we can't make certain types of transactions with certain people because they're, involved in criminal activity or something like that at a credit union, or and then you move on up the layers of the system, and how do you bridge those things together? Well, give people tools, make sure they know how to use them, make sure that whatever goals they have, they know how the tools are related to those goals. And then maybe some processes get adopted, and maybe eventually, I think the best regulations come from formalizing good processes that already exist and saying, well, this is what you guys are already doing. It seems to be working. This is a new thing. Nobody really understood it before. Let's take this model that works and see if we can't scale it up a little bit so that more people end up benefiting from, or at least working inside of a system that has been shown to work through practice. And that's why at the beginning of these journeys where we are building new technology, right, it's nice to see some freedom where they're not trying to prescribe to us, what elliptic curve we have to use for our public keys, or what proof of work versus proof of stake versus proof of whatever we have to use for everything. That's not something that the law is attempting to do, I would hope. And it allows us the freedom of experimentation. What we should do, in my opinion, is to take that time to build systems, not to flaunt the regulation, because some people will, and they'll benefit in the short term, but at the expense of long-term credibility and whatnot, right? But we can take that time to build things that do work and go from there. And those laws, they define things, and then we have to live with that, because those people have power. They've been given power to create laws, and so we better respect the people there, and also thank them for the time that we've been given to get it right, and to build systems that are reasonable in terms of combating things without trampling on freedom, and without making every single transaction have to be approved by the state or something like that. Like, no, you may not buy grapes from that merchant. You must buy them from this other one because we said so. It's like, that's the thing we really want to avoid, if history has taught me anything, personally at least. So we gotta figure out how to balance that and architect things from a technology perspective that further those things that we care about, and that we think a lot of other people would care about if they were to use our technology and get some good out of it.
Yeah. And Ty, it looks like you guys put out a new, I don't know if it's new, but I saw it, downloaded it. It's called a user wallet by Babbage. And I saw that. I bought some sats with a credit card just recently. Degan had put out a video about it. So is that something that is separate? I mean, it's completely separate from MetaNet, or is that within the MetaNet? Or
it's the same thing. So it's like you have Chrome and you have Firefox, and now we have yours, which is one of these as well. We have these different things. They're all doing the same language. You can use the user wallet with all of your MetaNet apps. So every app that uses BRC100, we have a list, and it's on metanetapps.com. And if you go on there, you can see a lot of apps. Of course, everybody makes more every day, so we don't keep it up to date completely, but the devs should bother us. And like, they all are on there, and you're going to be able to use MetaNet apps with whatever wallet you want. If you like the user wallet, if you like BSV desktop, If you like MetaNet Desktop, if you're on your phone, you use MetaNet Explorer. If you like Yours Wallet, which a lot of people do, because you want a browser extension. Well, they all let you use the same apps. Some wallets have some connections to service providers, maybe like User Wallet makes it super easy to buy BSV with a credit card. I don't know. It might not. Other wallets have different connections with different people, and they have to make use of the same protocol, because that's where all the apps are, and that's where all the other wallets are, and where the users are. Because if I'm collaborating with somebody on Pixel War, they might be on even Handcash, I suppose, because they did add support for that. But they might be on MetaNet Wallet or User Wallet. They might be on Yours Wallet, right? And the point is, if I'm a new wallet, I want to let all my users collaborate with as many people as possible of all the apps they use, right? And if I'm building an app, it's the same way. I want access to all the people who already have wallets, because I don't want to have to ask them to, get a new wallet if they already have one, when I just want to build an app. So that's why that language in the middle, the BRC100 language or protocol, really, it's a protocol, how they talk to each other, is there, and it means that User Wallet might not be around forever, but wallets can almost come and go as long as people, they can use whichever one they want. They can use whatever apps they want. Apps are going to come and go, but the language and the system where you can use all of your apps that you want that are here with all your data, and you can move your data around all the apps and everything. There's like multiple notes apps, and they all use the same notes protocol. I think Braden made one, MetaNet Docs. And it doesn't matter which wallet you use, and it doesn't matter which app you use, because you get access to the same data. So I don't know, I'm excited to see that growing, and User Wallet, you can use all the MetaNet. In fact, the very top button on the homepage of User Wallet says explore all of these apps, right? And you go on there and see all the lists. So it's there. That one's open source too. Some are open, some are going to be closed, but Firefox is open source, and Safari I don't think is, but they both use the web protocol, World Wide Web standards, and so that's the same for wallets. And the point is, make a wallet that puts your users first and lets them do what they want and follow the protocol, and make an app that is easy to use and lets your users do what they want and follow the protocol. And suddenly we get a really positive feedback loop of lots of apps and lots of users and lots of wallets, and it gets really easy to get the BSV that you need while following the rules, and all of that. But we're just gonna throw our hat in the ring with a random buy BSV thing, and I don't know what happens, but I want to, it's not like it's very low limits and all that, but
I see the new metanetacademy.com. I know it looks like it's been updated. It's really looking good. I mean, it's to build the future of the web, portable identity, use your own data, native micropayments, learn to build real applications with these primitives, the version of the web the early engineers never got to finish. Can you, that's a great statement, dude. Can you explain how the early engineers never got to finish these primitives?
Well, 404, when you go to a page, is 404 not found, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's been around forever, since the 90s, 404 not found. But before that, there's actually a bunch of them, right? There's 401, unauthorized, 403 is forbidden. 402 is payment required, but no one ever built it. No one ever had 402. So you have 404, page not found. You have all these other ones, but 402 was supposed to be payment required because they wanted a way to charge people when you could go to a website a small amount, and it's right. It's so clear that, ever since the 90s, this has been around, and they never finished it. They never figured it out. They didn't have the honesty ledger. They didn't have the way to do payments, and we have that. So that's what I mean by that. So that's why I built a school. I built a curriculum with labs. I don't know. I just want people to learn how to do stuff.
Yeah, so it looks like Mozilla is saying that the 402 payment error required code says that it's a non-standard response. It was created to enable digital cash or micropayments in the future, and that would indicate requested content is not available until the client makes a payment. No standard use convention exists at this present time, and different systems use other systems. So payment failure. Some payments under API use 402 response as a generic catch-all for all failed payments. The following example tries to make a call for payments. So it looks like, according to Mozilla, it's saying it just hasn't been figured out yet on how to solve that problem. So are you saying otherwise?
Yeah, the BSV blockchain is the missing piece, I believe, and I'm sure, like David would agree with that, and other people who work on this stuff. We built a micropayment system, and I don't know, there's some BRCs out there, BRC 105, I think. See, now even I'm losing numbers on the BRCs. 105, I think, is the micropayment one. It's the 104 or 105. And it's basically just how do we do a 402 that actually pays, and then afterwards the thing works, where before it didn't because it had the error. It's like how many Satoshis have to be paid. Hopefully,
is that true, David?
Use that.
If you want to
chime
in,
is where that was talked about. It teaches people. You have hands-on labs, and will grade your content. I believe Lab 10 is for the paid request endpoints. So that's what that refers to, and I hope we can get people to use that and make it what it needs to be.
Nice. Let me chime over to Archie. It looks like he's joined us. Maybe he could comment on this 402 error thing. Apparently that's what this MetaNet, I'm sorry, not the MetaNet. Yeah, the MetaNet Academy is teaching people how to do. Archie, did you want to chime in at all on this?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Yeah, I don't really have that much to say. To me, I think you said, Gavin, that, hey, there's been no way to solve it. To me, that's what Bitcoin was designed to solve. That is the purpose and intent of Bitcoin. So that's my take on it. It's not solved because doing it with Visa or PayPal is too expensive. The cost of settling a lot of these things, to do an API call, for example, if you wanted to charge someone to do an API call, a micropayment per call, the value of that is way less than the cost will be to settle the transaction. So you have to go get a subscription and get like keys. And I'm not sure what's been designed, but I kind of want to jump up here. I think Schroeder alluded to it, going through the MetaNet Academy, understanding why Ty and Babbage and the BSVA designed these protocols with, overlays, the hash resolution protocol, and all that. It's also to decentralize, these platforms is what it can do. And I want to ask, like, Ty or Schroeder, if you guys have really seen this happen. For example, I've seen several music sites built. I just saw Brandon made a post, and you can, sell songs for, for way less because you don't have to pay these fees. So they're using the micropayment what's enabled in micropayments in Bitcoin, but I still haven't. But it's still on like a centralized platform, and I haven't seen anything built that uses the overlays and the way I can see them designed. That makes each one of these services individually run, and they're not like vertically integrated. And I actually, Ty, I'm going to send an MD to you in the Slack, maybe see if you'll take a look at it, because I want to try to outline a vendor neutral Paymail. Sugar, I don't know if you guys are putting a Paymail in yours wallet, but just so that you can tokenize a Paymail on chain, have overlays, track it in the topic manager, and charge a micropayment to go through the Paymail server to send it. So I kind of had that AI outline it. I was wondering if I could maybe send it to you guys and just get your feedback on what it is, because it's going to be like truly decentralized. Say Gorilla Pool's running a server, a Paymail server, and they can charge a micro fee because it's so cheap that the wallet I'm building can do it. Babbage's wallet can call it. Yours wallet can call it, and just make a micro payment along with each transaction, and that'll show like, hey, the first like vendor neutral, decentralized platform like that.
All right. Yeah. Did you want to chime in, Babbage or David? Yeah, David, you first.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, yes, that is something we're building, and I don't know that it's determined. Well, I guess we'll say this. Paymail exists and works right now. Paymail has some broader issues, which I'm sure Ty could go into a lot more detail than I could on. Of it's better than what we've had before, but you certainly have to rely on a fair amount of infrastructure to pull that off. But yes, we are absolutely building that into this new release of yours. And in fact, one of the first things I built with OneSat ordinals when we created it almost 3 years ago was an on-chain contract called opns that essentially allows you um, to perform some proof of work to claim a globally unique identifier that exists on chain and is provable to be globally unique. And I several months ago started building up the overlay topic manager to validate those and to be able to sync those with each other, to be able to sync those across the overlay, I should say. And so, like, how that works, it's not publicly released, but it does function at this point. Of if you own one of these names and someone wants to run a server that is running on that overlay, so the overlay will know the specifics of what Bitcoin address owns that name at a given time. And so if you stand up the overlay service, so we have one that's going to be coming out called OneSat.name. And so our OneSat.name is running the overlay service. And if someone wants to send something to an OrdFS name, I own Shrugger. So I would, in this case, would be Shrugger at OneSat.name. OneSat.name is the server that's running the overlay. It can look up where Shrugger gets delivered. And because I'm giving people my address and I trust OneSat.name, there isn't a whole lot of risk that someone else can misdeliver it or deliver a wrong address, because I'm the one that told them send it to that address. So as long as OneSat.name is trustworthy, which doesn't exist yet, but the goal is that it will be, that will get delivered appropriately. But I do think there's also a whole lot of other kind of yet to be discovered mechanisms other than just Paymail, because Paymail is kind of bridging the gap between the Web 2 world and the Web 3 world. And I've got another tool that we've built, ordfs, which is about kind of serving up websites that are stored on chain. That's the tool that's really about bridging the Web 2 and the Web 3 world. Well, I think once we get further down the actual we're in the Web 3 world path, a lot of those Web 2 kind of fallbacks probably won't exist anymore. But the one thing I was going to say, just on your idea there, is the whole idea of saying this is a decentralized way of resolving addresses, but then you also brought up charging for it. Those two things kind of don't go together in that someone is going to be the one that's charging you for it. And so there can be protocols and stuff that says, okay, this is how you pay a micropayment to send a a Paymail, or I go to send a Paymail and that's part of the response is here's where you pay this micropayment fee to. Yeah, we can do that, but you get to a certain point of like, where are fees being paid to and who is making the fees? It's got to be the people who are running the services. And so it can't be just simply decentralized and trustless. There has to be reputation. There has to be something that you know that the channel through which you're sending this actually is there to forward that stuff on and actually has some skin in the game if they don't do it or if they lie to you and steal from you. And so it's a lot more complicated than just simply the tech needed to do these things.
Yeah, all of that makes perfect sense. There definitely have to be a standardized thing. And I was just thinking anybody can spin up an overlay and they'd be like a peer, right? So they could download, they could get it from their peer topic, almost like miners, but not. It would be that next overlay part of the Mandela network. So like if I don't want to use, Gorilla Pool, if say they're a MetaNet service provider and they're providing a Paymail server and they charge a micro fee, but I think it's too much. Well, then I can go to Babbage, who's also running the same overlay, and switch to them, and they can sync with each other. This would obviously take, standardized thing again. So I don't know, but also on that.
Well, and just to on that step, like I've got prototypes of that like ready and working right now for that OpNS and Paymail delivery on it. Like that's something that we've been prototyping for a year now, off and on when there's a moment to focus on it. So like these are not like things that now whether Babbage is going to want to run the OpNS overlay, I have no idea. That's not really anything I have say in. But
Right.
getting the tools out there that if they want to, they can just spin it up and we can
Right.
peer with each other and the data gets synced between us. Yeah, that absolutely can happen.
I would hope that would be like become a specialized business. And now this breaks down the verticals, and you can specialize in just running overlays and micropayments. I have one question about a cost on that, and a couple other questions for you too. If that middle layer will just become certain specialized, and a company can be profitable just running overlays to index things for people with micropayments in the API calls through standard protocols. And then how much are they going to charge? And I don't know how close you work with Gorilla Pool, but they changed the number of sats for the fees. It seems like it'd be really easy. Maybe this already exists and I just need to look. But I'm building a wallet too. I like to just on startup every so often, like just do an API call and be like, hey, what are you guys charging right now? And then I can dynamically adjust that for my wallet users, or if something changes in the future. I think
exist? It kind of already exists. So like Arc, Arc is the software that you broadcast transactions to, and all the out of the box Arc implementations right now do have a policy endpoint where you can get pricing from that Arc server. Now, having said that, I've also been spending the last 2 months working on a new kind of re-envisioning that product for a new product called Arcade that is the exact same kind of you broadcast transactions the exact same way into it, but the idea is not that this is a miner necessarily running it. This is literally you saying, okay, I've got a new service I'm running an arcade service. That arcade service communicates with Terranode to broadcast transaction and then watches the Terranode peer-to-peer network in order to get the proofs and rejections and like whatever actually happens with that transaction. And so it in that way, in some ways, it's kind of stepping out of the miner's hands when it comes to how do I actually broadcast this transaction. But miner fees, like the whole fee market for mining is a brand like we haven't really had it in BSV at all. And certainly, yes, in this fall, the miners kind of colluded with each other, saying, "Hey, we need to set a baseline here of 100 sats per kilobyte." I don't at all believe that even that standard sats per kilobyte model is going to necessarily be the long-term model for these things. I think that was at this point more just like a handshake that says, "Okay, we need to get these so at least they're not losing money because I mean not losing is there has to like at 1 Satoshi per kilobyte, essentially every miner will always be losing money until we get just tons and tons and tons
Right.
of transactions. And so this is just a way of basically saying let's have a starting point that's not the lowest that the software can actually handle, because that's what 1 Satoshi per kilobyte is. SV node can't go any lower than that. That is simply the lowest possible price, and that's where it's been for years now. And I think this was just like, okay, let's set it at something that's a little higher than that. And then new fee models are going to come out. Like I've proposed a fee model that basically says, yes, there's a how big is the transaction aspect to it, but there's also a how much are you changing the size of the UTXO set. So if you're pulling a lot more data out of the UTXO set and spending it and only creating a little bit of data in it, well, that should actually be a cheaper transaction. And they've already got some concept of that in SV node, but I don't think we're at a point that there is any real clear vision of how this is going to work 5 years down the road. I think that's an area where um, there is people who are running hash power. There is a market around getting those transactions on chain, or there will be, and these things are just kind of going to kind of emerge of how does the fee structure work for transactions.
Yeah, no, I like that. The fee you said per like the number of, because that's actual work that the miners are doing if they have to build more stuff, right?
Well,
And it,
storing. And essentially, UTXOs are the only. So for the whole rest of the chain, how big your transactions are is
right,
very, very trivial as far as cost to the miner. Essentially, the bigger the transaction, the more data they need to propagate to other peers at the time that the transaction is broadcasted. But once it's mined, that the size of that transaction has no effect, no cost, ongoing cost to them at all. The UTXO set has ongoing cost. When you create an output, that output
yeah,
stays in the UTXO set of every miner everywhere forever until it's spent.
but
And so, like, by creating UTXOs, you are allocating resources at every miner. And by spending those UTXOs, you're freeing up space for every miner everywhere. So yeah, I definitely do think that in the longer term, the amount of change you make to the UTXO set is probably going to be a bigger cost than how big a transaction is. But that's just my own opinion.
well, I agree with that opinion. I think it's great because it's part of the things about micropayments and discretely measuring the value of things. You can actually, charge things that reflect. It'll do a lot better price discovery at a much lower level. But that leads me to one other question that I want for you, and I want to ask another one I had before too. So two more questions, and then I'll let other people talk. The first one is when I was trying to get the AI to outline say the Paymail server, it's all handled within the wallet, and we talk about using IPv6 a lot in BSV. Like, would it be better and especially if you know who's running the servers and you have a wallet and you say, I know I know 3 people who are running these servers for my redundancies and fallbacks and who I have relationships with. Would it be better for them just to have an IPv6 address and then just have a standard at BSV at vendor neutral Paymail or whatever, and then just say, hey, this is just Shrugger at, for the human readable, have the wallet translate it to the IPv6 address. And then you don't have to buy a domain name. We're using IPv6. What do you think about that? So there's one question. And then on the other side of, the big data, how do the models work? Where do you think, like putting music files or videos, where does it become better to just put a hash of it on chain for integrity, but store it other places?
Well,
And
Yeah, and for the last one, there's some really interesting things about that, because in some ways, this goes to exactly what I was just talking about, the UTXO set being really the only cost to, only ongoing cost to miners. But what that ultimately means is hashing it on chain or putting it on chain, as long as it doesn't live in the UTXO set, are actually kind of the exact same thing. Because what ultimately gets stored in the block headers, if you put the whole file on chain, is a hash of, well, it's the full Merkle tree, but ultimately it boils down to the hash of the transaction, which includes the whole file. Or what goes in the block header is a hash of the file that's in the transaction. But what gets stored with the miners, it really doesn't matter. Like, the block headers are the important part of that, and the UTXO set. So, and I will say this coming from a standpoint of, I have some unrepentant guilt. Maybe it's repentant of just. I mean, I personally have led to huge bloating of the BSV UTXO set, whether it be now OneSat ordinals in and of themselves. When you inscribe them, they balloon the UTXO set, but as soon as you transfer them, they kind of de-balloon it. But that could have been done in other ways that didn't have to live in the UTXO set in the first place. Like, actually, in BTC, they don't. In BTC, they reveal their inscriptions in inputs instead of in outputs, and inputs don't go in the UTXO set. And so there's a lot of these kind of things of, all the crypto fights has got tons and tons of one Satoshi outputs that are stuck in UTXOs that are littering miners all over the place that most people don't have any way of getting their keys for anymore. So there's but ultimately, like, pruning is kind of what like, how do I say this? The UTXO set and the block headers are all that really represents the blockchain. Everything else, all the historical transactions, are essentially just like, they're transient. They just kind of come into existence, and then the hashes get recorded. And as long as you've got the transaction and the Merkle proofs, you can prove that transaction was part of the blockchain. But what does it really mean to store a file on the blockchain? Well, it really just means it got hashed as part of the transaction, as a part of the block headers. And so it's another one of those, like, the question sounds easy until you really dig into what it is. But I'm a huge fan of, basically, if the thing that you're putting on there is supposed to be publicly accessible, is a public thing, I mean, if it's source code that people can run directly from a transaction on chain, or if it's a website that's sort of like, I'm a fan of the thing that says record public things on chain. Yes, they get time stamped, but also the data itself, the content itself, has traversed the network through the miners. And I don't know. I like the idea of addressing actual data on chain from transaction IDs, where you can get the actual data out of the transaction. But anything that you want to have, like, protected in any way or private in any way, or, like, yes, you could record it encrypted on chain, but why is it going on chain in the first place? And there might be use cases where you want it there. It might be part of a more complex transaction that whereby revealing encryption keys, you both unlock something but also reveal what it is. Well, okay, that's a case where you might want private stuff on chain, but it's only private for a certain period of time. Or, more than likely, if all you're really trying to do is just show agreement that we have agreed to this revision of this document, well, you don't need the whole document necessarily. You might just need the hash, and all you're really doing is recording that on chain such that you have conflict resolution or proof, but you don't actually need the whole document itself.
Right, but the documents still need to be stored somewhere, so it's better to just keep storing it on
Well, but again,
AWS or something. What did you
storing
say?
it on the blockchain still means it needs to be stored somewhere. Now, there has to be, in order for new miners to be able to sync with the chain, there does need to be archival storage of the chain somewhere. And so, yeah, if it's available in the transaction and you have the transaction ID, it is certainly likely that you can pay someone to retrieve that transaction and the actual data. Where if you just record a hash, well, the data never existed on chain at all. But you still come down to the point that someone needs to store this stuff. Like historical transactions don't really exist in the mining software. They can exist in archival features of the mining software, but the miners don't need historical transactions in any way except for to sync with other miners. So yeah, it is the nuances make the discussion a little more intricate than one would think it is.
What do you think about the other IPv6 question?
I don't know. Very much where I'm at with that is we got to see how things move forward, and I think that's kind of even what Craig's post that we talked about early on in this space was. Is like there's still things that are not like, yes, the standards exist, but they don't exist in the real world yet. The multicast IPv6 in the infrastructure that we have in the real world of right now, well, it's defined. There's software that does it, but no, it's not part of the reality of what our internet looks like right now. And so a lot of those things, just like talking about minor fees, like a lot of that's going to be kind of emergent, I think. I don't know that it's like, I think some people are going to throw some ideas out there. If you look at computer networking in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, like there was tons of different networking standards and different ways of, you might have a Novell network, or you might have a token ring network, or you might have an Ethernet network. And um, but throughout there, TCP/IP certainly over Ethernet kind of emerged as the winner, and IPv6 has been defined, and I'm sure that will be the winner. But exactly how that rolls out to the world, I mean, it sounds like that's actually something that BSVA and or Craig are actually trying to instigate happening within AWS or whatever, and I think that's great. But I don't know that I have the answers for exactly how any of that's going to work.
I think seems like a million to billion problem. Like once we get to a world where we have a million TPS, then it will be much easier to think about what might be required for a few of our ISP friends when we are the majority of their operating revenue, to get us from there to 1 billion TPS. But my suspicion is it will probably be they will act when acting will make them more money than they currently have. And if we tell them, if you do this, then you'll get a gold star, right? Now it doesn't really work. But if you tell them you do this and now you're going to be able to make your network 1,000 times more throughput, and then there's going to be more fees for you, or you're going to you're going to be able to charge more, because we're probably also thinking about a per packet charge world or something like that. The point is we align the incentives, but I do agree that it's completely almost unknowable from our current vantage point exactly what protocols or mechanisms. I have written about a couple of protocols and mechanisms, BRC 80, 83, 89, but everybody can write about it. It's like saying, I have an opinion. Well, because that's really all it is. Everybody has an opinion. What happens is people choose things, and it takes time, because once we're at, maybe near the limits, and I don't even know if the current limits are really 1 million or whether it could go up a little higher than that before we reach something like that. And I'm sure if the economics are there, then you can justify it by far. Well, then, yeah, someone's going to come along at that point, and it's going to be, hey, guys, I have this really creative idea, and it's going to save you a whole bunch of money, because now I don't have to pay as much to do things the inefficient old way, and the system gets disrupted. But we should focus on getting the first million transactions per second, in my opinion. And it is good to think about this, because eventually the person who has thought about it the best way will probably be very financially successful and will probably, win the market in terms of building the next generation of switching hardware, for example, that incorporates correct support for multicast protocols or something. But it's just who's going to invest in what on what time scale. You can't be too early, you can't be too late. You have to align it correctly with what everybody wants, and you have to predict and understand what that is, and that's who's going to win that game. But it's like a 10 years from now game, it feels like. And if we get to 1 million TPS on mainnet, sustained with real use cases and revenue behind it, and lots of people, well, there's some big implications there in terms of getting there within 4 or 5 years or less. I don't know how long people are saying that would take, but like, that's what it feels like to me. And that world is a very different world than the one we live in now, and it's also one in which we have a lot more credibility and influence to talk to ISPs about what makes sense, and attend those types of meetings and all of that. The fact that we're already thinking about it and talking to some people at AWS and all of that, running some tests and whatever they did. That's it's one step in a direction that that some people should probably think about going. But I guess it's also important that not everybody focuses on that, because some people have to focus on making the first million. In fact, most people probably have to focus on getting the first killer use case adopted and getting 1 million TPS on mainnet, since according to what people have said, right, that's where we are now, and that's what we can support. So we get there, or even in my world,
even ongoing several thousand TPS.
What is it?
I said, or even ongoing several thousand TPS for now would be a win.
Let's, how huge would that be, right? Like if we're at 100,000 or even less, right? It's like that doesn't, that's still such a different world that we can go from there after we get there. Cross the bridge when we come to it in some way. I did think, not to change the subject or anything too drastically, but I did think that the discussions around IBD are also interesting in terms of what needs to be retained, and I'm sure I have a minority opinion about that when I say that I don't even necessarily believe that the entirety of the UTXO set would be required, although it would be a risk function if it wasn't there in the long term, like in the super long term. To get a new miner into the fold, but I've written a little bit about that, but certainly for now there's going to be enough archival storage tapes that we'll be able to keep everything around and let everybody do a full IBD if they need one.
For anyone who doesn't speak nerd, IBD is initial block discovery. That's a new miner kind of getting spun up on the state of the chain.
New miner getting spun up.
It's like, what does the miner have to go through? What process do they have to use in order to be ready to start mining, I guess? And right now everybody kind of has a copy of things and is willing to share that with new miners. In the future, if there's been quintillions of transactions or some insanely large number, how those dynamics evolve are going to be somewhat interesting, 5, 10, 20 years down the road.
I mean, what do you think things are going to be going here, guys? With the convergence of the law right now and all of the technology. I mean, it seems like a very, very emergent time to think that here we are with the Clarity Act. They're now defining the blockchain in Congress. They're defining blockchain protocol. They're defining, these very relevant words are becoming they're becoming legally defined, and they're legal things now in entities for the first time in the law, and this emerging system is all kind of playing out. I mean, I don't know, where do you think this is going?
Firstly, and I say this jokingly, Gavin, unless you read my book, emergence is an unpredictable phenomena. But secondly, well, people choosing different things is very hard to predict, and I don't know what would happen. It's like, well, what is the intersection of law with anything? There are implications for those who make the law and those who have to follow it, and pressures that get applied. And then, of course, you can't make a pie in the sky law that just doesn't even make any sense, because the real world, will, like, objective reality can be legislated away, but also, objective reality can be somehow constrained on a layer above through human political processes. I don't know. It's a tough question, and emergence is very complicated, right? What is the nature of emergence? How do novel things result from simple component level interactions between many people? Trying to wrap your head around the science of complexity theory is almost a base prerequisite in order to try to predict what happens when, we get millions of transactions per second, and like the things that we've theorized about in the past, like how in a world dominated by mining fees instead of subsidy on new blocks, where people actually pay a lot compared to the subsidy, and the subsidy is pretty irrelevant. Well, then, if there hasn't been a block for 2 minutes, almost nobody's mining, because everybody's waiting for more transactions before it's worth their while to start trying to look for a block. At like 8 minutes, a good majority of people are mining because they feel like they might get lucky and find it a little early, and they've got a lot of fees in there kind of starting to build up. If no block has been found for 14 minutes, well, then you have you have an above average number of transactions, and so your block reward is going to be higher than it normally would. So maybe if you're not normally profitable, maybe you turn on your older generation mining hardware just for a little bit in order to burn some electricity, because normally it wouldn't be worth it to burn, but no block has been found for 14 minutes. So, it's a little bit more profitable to look. And, gosh, if it goes on for an hour where there's been no block, well, then your block reward is 6 times as high, which means that equipment normally turned off ages ago because it's 6 times less efficient in terms of finding blocks. It still has a chance. And if it does, the risk might be worth the reward, and therefore, turn it all on, right? And then the instant that block gets found, then all those old machines turn off immediately, and they're like, okay, well, that was fun, but we're going to go back to a normal state. And this happens every 10 minutes. The power usage increases and increases and increases as all these new people try to join the search for the next block. And then right when it gets found, well, better turn it all off. And that almost creates like a heartbeat signal almost every 10 minutes on the grid, well, on average, right? And the implications of that are wide reaching in terms of the stability and the reliability of the 10-minute block, because in that world, it's usually going to be found about at 10 minutes every time, because people aren't going to turn their thing on until it's close, and then when they do, a lot of things are going to get turned on all at once, all the hardware, and then it's going to be found because that's where the target is. That's when the optimal range is, and everybody tries to find it so that they want to be first, and therefore they want to turn their equipment on slightly beforehand. But it creates a stabilization function, and that's like one example of emergence, like that phenomena. No one decided that there was going to be a massive, right, a massive increase in electricity right at 10 minutes, and then right when the block gets found, that the whole electric grid is going to have a whole bunch of extra capacity that it didn't need anymore since everybody turned off their old ASIC hardware. No single entity ever decided that, but it was emergent because we defined these simple rules. We had some component interactions, and then what causes these higher level things to happen? Well, it's hard to know, and it's hard to predict, and it's hard to say what happens afterwards in pretty much any model. But maybe just a little thought experiment there, and maybe a little bit tangential, but hopefully at least interesting.
Thank you. So, Casey, did you have anything you wanted to add here as we kind of wind down? I know you've been posting a bunch of things. Did you want to draw some attention to anything, Casey?
Just been taking notes as people have been speaking and trying to put it into bite-sized, bits of content from what we're talking about here. And it's all very interesting. I think we're at a major convergence, crossing point here. So I'm just grateful that I personally know how good the heart and spirit of a lot of the people that are building this infrastructure is. And thank you guys for all the hard work you're putting in to make all this stuff actually come to fruition. So thanks for joining, Ty. I appreciate you hopping on today, and David, and just keep building.
Yeah, this is pretty amazing. Like we're like in the trenches with the guys who are actually who have built the infrastructure for this new protocol. Well, it's the original protocol, the original Bitcoin protocol, that's causing this flipping. So it's pretty incredible. While it sounds can sound dry to boomers, they hear this like what it can sound dry. It's not your favorite degen topic, but some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it really is, because it's causing such a massive more demand for these transactions on chain. And this emergence, like, I don't know, Ty corrected me on the word emergence. It may not be the right word, but it's this convergence of law and the technology into one right now is where I'm really excited, dude, on how that's coming together. So it's fascinating. It really is. So yeah, well, thank you. Did you guys have any any closing thoughts? Ty, did you want to add? David, closing thoughts or Babbage? Yeah, Ty, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, well, always cool to jump on, guys. Good talking to you. Thanks for let me know that this space was even going on, Casey. Otherwise, I would have totally missed it. So,
thank you, Ty. David Case.
Yeah, just that we got. I don't know. I'm as optimistic right now as I've ever been about BSV, and kind of even reinvigorated of a lot of the things that really drew me into the first place. And I don't know. I kind of feel like buckle in, because I feel like 2026 is going to be pretty cool.
And I don't really see you as the hype man. Maybe like that's more me, So I'm wondering what makes you so bullish. I just don't see that as your. That's not usually you. You're pretty just. I don't know. I haven't really noticed you as that way.
Well,
so
I don't know that I'm necessarily bullish when it comes to the price of VSV, although that will definitely, well, I don't know if definitely, that one would hope should come along with it. But I just simply mean kind of the vision of what Bitcoin is and what makes it special, that drew me to this 7 years ago or whatever it was. Like then there was a lot of like hypotheticalness to it. It's not a word, but that's okay. And now there's like tangible pieces all throughout the stack that if someone wants to throw together a I don't know, just stuff that we've wanted, that we've had, that's been very half-assed for many years now, just because of the amount of resources it takes to keep things running. And now there's there's kind of all these toolbox pieces that could just be plugged together, and people who want to start doing kind of the innovative stuff that will build us to that point of having users that generate significant transaction volume. Like, the tools are all there now to be able to actually be able to build those things without going broke trying to run the infrastructure to do so.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, dude. Archie, closing thoughts?
Just thanks for letting me up here and pick your brain, and Sugar and Ty. Good feedback, good new things to think about and look at, and also optimistic. Hopefully we can get some cool apps and some new users and show the capabilities. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And definitely also the what Connor's doing with the Chronicle upgrade is really, really important. I think it's really, really, really key right now. Restoring the final version of the protocol. Definitely check out that article that he's got there. And so that's a really, amazing features that it's all coming together right now. So yeah, let's do it again sometime. We'll do the Great Bitcoin Flipping series again. We'll knock all this out, everybody up. And it's funny, I've had like people on from like DGens, and they talk about DGen stuff, and then I got you guys on here, like really smart people like this, like super intelligent. So it's like a kind of a different variety of people that I've had up, and it's been awesome, man. So I appreciate it. Let's do it again sometime. I'll see everyone at the top. Thank you, Casey, very much for helping to put this together. All right. Later, guys.